Today, we will talk about a truth that has never changed throughout history: people's hatred of taxes and the ability of rulers to turn that hatred into power. Tax. It is not just money taken from our pockets. In the ancient world, it meant keeping armies standing, building temples, expanding harbors, and most importantly, preserving power. Especially in a place like ancient Greece, filled with political turbulence, collecting taxes was not merely an economic process, but a strategy of rule. Today, we will talk about such rulers who turned taxes either into a tool to win the favor of the people or into an instrument of fear and manipulation. Peisistratos reduced the risk of rebellion by placing peasants in economic dependence. Cypselus confiscated the wealth of the rich to build a social base, and Dionysius I doubled his treasury by altering the value of coinage. All of these stories unite around one question: is taxation a burden that weakens the people, or a weapon that creates power in the hands of a wise ruler? Today, we will examine taxation not merely as finance, but as an invisible struggle between political control, loyalty, and freedom. Let us together look into the treasuries of history's most powerful tyrants and the strategic thinking behind the systems they built. Throughout history, people's hatred of taxes has remained an unchanging fact. However, in ancient Greece, collecting taxes was not merely about filling the state treasury. It was also considered one of the most effective tools for maintaining power. This process was not simply the collection of money, but a form of political statecraft. In this context, the story of Peisistratos, who came to power in Athens around 561 BCE, is particularly interesting. He was neither a democrat nor a classic aristocrat. He was a tyrant. It should be noted that in the understanding of that era, a tyrant referred simply to someone who had seized power through non-constitutional means, and the word did not carry the negative meaning it has today. Among the tyrants of that time were not only cruel rulers, but also those who were astonishingly effective and successful in governance. Peisistratos was a remarkably far-sighted strategist who understood that to preserve his rule, he needed both the army and the favor of the people. In order to secure the financial resources required to achieve these goals, he took an unusual step for his time by imposing a tithe, 1/10, tax on agriculture. The key difference in his system was that the tax was calculated not directly according to the amount of produce, but according to the land itself. This meant that no matter how much more the farmer produced, the tax amount remained unchanged, encouraging them to work more productively. At the same time, Peisistratos acted almost like a banker by providing poor farmers with loans to purchase seeds and necessary equipment. Through this tactic, he both made the peasants economically dependent on him, thereby preventing possible uprisings, and ensured that the state treasury received more revenue as agricultural productivity increased. Throughout history, tyrants have used various economic maneuvers and strategies to protect their power. For example, Cypselus, who came to power in Corinth in 657 BCE, confiscated the lands and wealth of wealthy aristocrats to win the favor of the people. He spent these resources on building statues, erecting temples, and funding various public works, thereby beautifying the city and providing employment for ordinary people. This approach was a classic example of populist governance, serving to create an unshakable social base by taking from the rich and giving to the poor. On the other hand, Dionysius I, who ruled in Syracuse in the early 4th century BCE, turned the tax system into a kind of weapon and adopted harsher methods. He collected taxes from every sphere, from imports and exports to slaves, thereby strengthening financial control. Dionysius's most striking move was carrying out one of history's first major currency manipulations. He ordered silver coins to be struck with double denominations, effectively canceling half of the state's debts and doubling his treasury. These two different approaches demonstrate how tyrants strengthened their political positions either through direct confiscation of wealth or through complex financial maneuvers. In ancient times, Tyrants used taxes in interesting and strategic ways to consolidate their power. For instance, some rulers invested collected funds into wars, and the spoils of those wars in turn enabled the collection of even more taxes. Through this cycle, it became possible to maintain massive fleets of more than 500 ships, financed entirely by taxation. To prevent public dissatisfaction, a rainy day fund strategy was employed. Wise tyrants accumulated reserves to distribute grain during famines, create public works in times of crisis, or hire mercenaries in moments of danger. Polycrates of Samos is a perfect example of this style of governance. In the 6th century BCE, he collected taxes from every ship entering the harbor, amassed great wealth, and used it to carry out enormous projects such as water canals and magnificent temples. Even though people sometimes complained about his methods, they benefited from the infrastructure he provided, especially the reliable water supply. Another important innovation was introduced in Sicily by Hiero II, Tyrant of Syracuse. The tithe system he established, known as the lex hieronica, was so efficient that even after the Romans conquered Sicily, they retained the system without changing it. The transparency underlying Hiero's tax system represented a significant innovation in state administration. Each citizen clearly knew their obligation, and tax collectors who took bribes were severely punished, creating a sense of justice among farmers. The funds collected through this system allowed the ruler to form alliances with Rome and finance the Punic Wars. Interestingly, the financial mechanisms created by these tyrants later became the economic foundation of democratic Athens and the maritime empire of the age of Pericles, laying the groundwork for the modern state. At the same time, rulers like Peisistratos, who spent tax revenues not on personal enrichment but on the flourishing of the city, are remembered fondly as part of Athens' golden age. These historical examples clearly show that collecting taxes is not merely a financial process, but a profound political strategy used to gain loyalty, weaken rivals, and consolidate power. The tax systems implemented by the tyrants of ancient Greece functioned not only as financial tools, but also as effective machines of political control. For example, leaders like Cypselus and Peisistratos demonstrated that by heavily taxing elites and spending the resulting funds on public works, infrastructure, and security, it was possible to gain popular support. However, the success of such systems also depended on honest administration. Attempts like those of Dionysius to achieve short-term gains through currency debasement completely undermined long-term trust. Although many tyrants portrayed themselves as protectors of the people who ended corruption and brought justice, this often came at the cost of freedom, turning into an eternal bargain in which security was exchanged for liberty. History proves that no tax system can last forever, because unchecked authority ultimately undermines the very systems it uses to sustain itself. For this reason, Greece's transition to democracy was not accidental. People realized that collectively managing financial administration was better than entrusting it to the whims of a single ruler. Although taxes continued to be collected in the democratic era, citizens now had a voice in the process. Even today, despite complaints about modern tax systems, the fact that wealth is not arbitrarily confiscated by tyrants and coins are not suddenly restruck represents significant progress. Ultimately, this eternal union of taxation and power shows that the core issue is not taxation itself, but who collects it, for what purpose, and how it is spent. Thank you for watching us. If this topic was interesting to you, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and activate notifications. In the upcoming videos on this channel, we will take a deeper look at history, economics, and the major processes shaping the world. Your opinions are important to us as well. Share your thoughts in the comments. Remember, those who understand the past build the future more correctly.